Okay.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mateo. I also go by Chile Dulce and I use they, them pronouns. I am one of three folks behind Black Cinema Collective alongside Berette S Macaulay and Savita Krishnamurthy. Just want to welcome all of you to our second of three panels for our inaugural presentation of Black Spatial Elegance. But before we begin, I would like to do an acknowledgement. And as a Quichua native, this is of particular importance because Black Cinema Collective lives and works on stolen ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples and shared waters of all tribes and bands named and unnamed, including Suquamish, Duwamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We recognize that additionally that this is the landscape has been shaped by Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino laborers who have built railroads and worked on mines, crop fields, logging camps, and salmon canneries, as well as African Americans who have worked in shipyards and founded the Northwest Enterprise, a newspaper serving a key role in supporting Black communities in Seattle. So we pay respects to elders past and present, and here are a number of ways that you can support them. There's Rio Went Duwamish, which we will provide links in the comments soon, and of course, Queer the Land. And for those of you who don't know who Black Cinema Collective is, we screen and examine local and global works of African and African diasporic filmmakers. But specifically for tonight, Black Spatial Elegance recognizes and celebrates Black Music Month in Seattle, where we foreground the influence of Black music through the visual and cinematic legacies of videos, films, art direction, and design produced by Black storytellers throughout the diaspora. Keep in mind, this is a live event, but we will still have these events recorded and available on all of our pages afterwards. So please share with your friends and chosen family. We also encourage y'all to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for us under Black Cinema Collective. And as many of you might know, that we are doing this as a labor of love. And so we're always looking for folks to support us and to support our work. And so we're accepting direct donations via our PayPal and Venmo accounts. Links will also be provided in a moment. But we also have a fiscal sponsorship through Northwest Film Forum. So if you're looking to do a donation that is tax deductible, we encourage you to go to Northwest Film Forum and then look for our page specifically to do that donation. Tonight's presentation is Black Spatial Elegance Sight and Sound with guest artist Rell Be, who is a local Seattle artist, Berette S Macaulay, who's an artist and of course Black Cinema Collective's founder, Jazmyn Scott, who is the program director of Langston Seattle, and Inye Wokoma, who is an artist and co-founder of Wa Na Wari. Just so you're aware that after the event, we will be providing a playlist, and so we encourage you to share that as well. But for now, I'm going to turn it to Berette Macaulay to continue the introduction.
Thank you so much, Mateo, and thank you everyone for joining us, and big thanks to our fellow panelists, and also just shout out to Ian Saporan, who is our tech producer on all of our events, without whom we wouldn't be able to come live to you. So thank you so much, Ian. So tonight we are in the second conversation in a three-part series of an annual event, Black Spatial Elegance, that will be coming to you again next year. So keep up with us. Tonight we're going to be talking through some nostalgic spaces of music video and music that means a lot to us over the last generation. We're going to be talking from Michael Jackson's Thriller and Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation through to how that has influenced the long album film like Lemonade, and thinking through diasporic imageries, looking at Michael Kiwanuka's videos, Nathan Nzanga, who's actually an African immigrant here based in Seattle, Blitz Ambassador, Freetown Collective from Trinidad, to name a few, thinking about all of the music video visuals and how they've influenced cinema and television, situating our conversation within global discourses of caste, class, economy, hegemony, and style, and understanding how those intersections and nuanced differences affect different Black cultures around the world, and how this shows up in cinematic modes of storytelling. And of course, we're going to be talking to Rell Be about his music videos and his relationships with his directors, and what his activism is for filming locally in Seattle. So I'm so excited to invite you all to enjoy this conversation, and we are kicking it with our drinks. And without further ado, Rell Be, Jazmyn Scott, and Inye Wokoma. Woohoo! Welcome, welcome, welcome.
What was that little explosion you did, Ralph? Can I get one of those?
I was trying to have my hood on.
You had your
the timing didn't work, but
I was like, oh.
It's good, y'all.
Cool. That was beautiful. That was an action-packed intro, Berette. So
Action-packed. I mean, it's an action-packed playlist and an action-packed world of music videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so excited because Inye and I have been like talking weekly for the last 2-3 months about all the videos that we've selected. And obviously this is not an exhaustive list. This is a starting list for ongoing conversations over the next few years, however long we feel like kicking it to do this. I wanted to start us off by putting this all out to you. What Michael Jackson's Thriller or Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation meant to you when that came out, and just thinking about the directors and the cinematography in those films, as well as the music, or how it helped to bring across the messages of the music or the narratives in the music. Because what we're trying to do here, right, is think about the directors who don't get named, and they're not the household names, but yet they're giving us all this imagery that is helping the music spread and have greater meaning. So yeah, let's start there. I know, Jazmyn, you wanted to like get into the Thriller talk. So.
Well, it's just because, you know, when we were looking at the different songs that were being added to the playlist, and just thinking about like the trajectory of music videos and how far they've come along, and, you know, where things are today, like I really feel like the majority of artists of all genres probably were influenced more than likely by what Michael Jackson did with his music videos. I feel like he changed the game, and that could be from my perspective, just from the generation that I'm from, you know. So I was young when Thriller came out. It scared the shit out of me as a child. Like I remember being a kid and being at like family members' houses, and that video was being played, and I would be horrified because I really loved Michael Jackson. Like, who didn't? But then I was like, what happened to Michael Jackson? Like, what's going on? So it terrified me. But the more I got to understand it, you know, it was really intriguing. Like, he made a movie from his song. And, you know, now folks are doing that, and that's like commonplace in the way music videos are being made, being produced and directed. But that was a brand new concept in the 80s. And he was bold and brave, but also part of our earlier conversation was, you know, many of us are aware of how like very, you know, particular Michael Jackson was in his craft, in every area of his craft. And so it's my impression that he had heavy influence on every aspect of not only the song and all that, but how the video was made, right? Every angle, you know, but we don't talk about the other folks behind the scenes that.
Yeah, like, so I don't know how many people know, but Jerry Kramer was the person who directed Thriller along with Michael Jackson. So he was co-directing, and also Michael Jackson produced it. But yeah, I mean, anybody who's seen the making of Thriller, we see how he was like right by the director's chair looking at every shot, and sitting in the editor's chair looking at every shot, and being very particular about how all of that was cut together, right? And also the makeup, and I mean, just the makeup alone and the costumes alone, and the choreography, right? I think John Landis
Jackson did everything.
Yeah. He was not, this is also one of the things that, thinking about the whole playlist, we went through each one thinking about the artists who had the agency to make decisions over the films that were being made to accompany or the container to hold their music. And Michael Jackson was one of those early Black artists, right, who had that agency because of his stardom, I suppose, but because he had that agency to make those decisions. The record company wasn't telling him, you're gonna work with this director and this is the crafted image we're making for you. He was making that decision. And that's something that's important to hold too. who gets to make those decisions and who has that agency for how they're going out into the world and what messaging is being crafted visually with the music, right? So there's, in that, I have to throw in here, a little contentious maybe, I don't know, it's gonna be fun. For me, Janet Jackson, his baby sister, brought it more with Rhythm Nation in that, like, in terms of the whole arc of that story. I mean, Thriller was a horror film, essentially, right? But Janet Jackson brought in the idea of making a long form film. It's a 30 plus minute film, taking on social justice issues, taking on issues of, you know, drug dealing and what it is to stay on course and keep your dream going when you're working in, you know, inner city community where you don't have money and opportunities, looking at tragedies that happen in that space and being like this modern good fairy in the space. So I'm like wondering how you would hold that, you know, in terms of what she did to take the music film just a little bit further with that.
Well, I guess for me, because I'm terrible with time, like I'm considering like the order, like of when Thriller came out, when Rhythm Nation and all the other videos that, because of course, top of mind for me is like all the videos, long form videos that Michael Jackson did. He did so many where he also, you know, so Thriller was like the first one where, like you said, it was a horror film. But then, you know, he went into some of his other songs where he made these longer videos that actually did address some of those similar issues as well.
You're right.
And then also did, you know, did the entertaining thing, but also was really, one thing that I recognize about Michael Jackson is that even in subtle ways, he always highlighted Blackness, you know, in the way his art was being portrayed. You know, one of my favorites, of course, is the why is it? I was mentioning it the other day when we were talking. Why can't
Smooth Criminal? No, not Smooth Criminal.
Smooth Criminal,
yeah.
But the one where they did the Egyptian theme.
Oh, remember the time.
Thank you. Remember the time. I said it 100 times the other day when we were talking, but of course, right now I can't remember. But remember the time. You know what I mean? Of course, which, you know, certainly has influenced like, you know, the Coming to America, especially this new one, you know, and things like that. There's just the subtleties that he brought, I think, to all of the different themes that he had in his, not only in his songs, but in his music videos, have really inspired, I think, artists and directors, like I said, across genres and even not in music, in film as well, you know. But I don't know, because I'm, like I said, I'm not good with time. It's hard for me to make that comparison with him and his sister. I think that they just come from this genius family.
I mean,
you know,
was in their water.
They really understand, and especially the two of them, they really understand how to create in a way that is going to capture their audience. You know, they're capturing us with their art form. So it was never only about the music for them. They're
they had a powerful sense of what the power of visual imagery and the power of creating a visual literacy around music, and how that can sort of galvanize people to like think differently about other issues.
Yeah.
You know, not just jam into the tunes.
Yeah. So I think, you know, and I feel like somebody was wanting to make the segue. I think you kind of inched it in there a little bit, Jazmyn, but talking about the dance, right? So I think there are like these multiple levels of sort of aesthetic mastery, you know, in terms of what actually comes through in the music video, right? So there's the music, right? There's the music. There are the visuals, the narrative, you know, the visual aesthetics, and then there's just, you know, there's the aesthetic of the choreography. Right. You know, and all those things actually work together. Yeah. Right. You know what I'm saying? To bring a presentation that sometimes it almost, you know, when you initially watch it, it almost defies, you can't really categorize it or pinpoint what it is that's so mesmerizing about it. Right. But it really is the accumulation of all those things. And I think just the fact that there's a coherent vision, that, you know, and that's that part about the artist really, you know, having, you know, a integral say, you know, in what we actually see, right? What actually the final product is, right? But I think the biggest thing about, you know, in y'all's conversation about the Jacksons, particularly, you know, starting with Michael and then because even Mike, so we talk about Michael Jackson, but sometimes we don't talk about the fact that Michael Jackson as a solo artist is building off the platform of the Jacksons.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, if he didn't just pop up and just become Michael Jackson.
That's right.
In the 1983 with Off the Wall, right, which I think was his first solo album. Which is interesting because there's such, I always feel like there's a difference between Off the Wall and Thriller, right? The next album, right, where Off the Wall was his last legit, let me say it, black album.
I mean, somebody had to.
But I mean,
somebody had to say it.
And it's not a knock. It's not a knock. I'm not knocking it, but he did transform into a pop star after that, right? Yeah. But then I opened the door for the rest of Jackson's.
Wait, and did you say Off the Wall was the last black album or Thriller?
I said Off the Wall.
Can I just drop something there to respond to that just 1 second?
Right.
Because there is a song on Thriller, Lady in My Life.
Oh yeah.
That is as back as it gets.
Well, hold on. Well, so now we're gonna start talking about music. We're gonna get off track. Let me just, but I just want to say, listen, I'm not saying that Michael stopped, and listen, when I say black music, I'm talking about music that when you hear it, you'd be like, oh, this is for black folks. Right. You like, this is something that you would hear on the black radio station that no white programming director would ever program on a pop radio station anytime before 1995, 96, 97, whatever, right? When people started really trying to mix it up intentionally. That's my only point, right? But I'm saying that when I say Off the Wall was that, because that's the last album that cohesively from front to back had that feel. Everything else was really infused with pop, but it had those singular tracks. He always came with those tracks that took you back to the hood, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
whether it was Human Nature or whatever, it was always something that brought you back. Like, oh yeah, Mike, I see you, right?
I was going into it.
Right? Yeah, I see you. Okay, we got it. Right.
Well, if I could add as well, we got to remember too that Michael Jackson's not from the hood. He grew up in maybe a hood family. Shout out to their family, man. Some hood stuff down in the Jackson. But also, I think, like, as we're talking about, the different elements of the visuals, the video, the genre of music, I think it actually alludes to the kind of stories that'll be told in the visuals. And it's just, historically, how many Black pop artists are telling culturally Black stories in their music and in their visuals. And I would say that obviously, like Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, they probably did that maybe differently than pop artists post 90s. But I definitely think that the genre influences the kind of stories that can be told. And I think that when we think about like hip hop, of course, or even like late R&B, I'm thinking like Luther, Marvin Gaye, like they're telling real Black stories, inner city blues, Mercy, Mercy Me. These are extremely Black stories, but it's also music that is now being appealed to pop. So I think there is I appreciate the distinction and the difference in like who the stories are being told to, who they're being told for, and then how they're being told. Because let's keep it real. There's a couple Mike videos that the ending, I'm like, so Beat It is all about running from fights? Is that what you're telling me? The whole song's about running from the fight?
Wow.
I don't know if I mess with that. But, at the same time, then you got, all I want to say is they don't really care about it. And he did one of those in the jail, and then he did another one.
And in the favelas, down in Brazil,
mm-hmm.
And those, remember the one in jail was banned. That was banned from television.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was too controversial and aggressive for television. And so it was banned. And
which
then
is hilarious.
Went down to Brazil and filmed.
I think that's funny.
Isn't that funny?
But it's interesting. Listen, I think it's interesting.
And improve the point of the song.
Right, but to have that, so that came out in what, like the late 80s, early 90s. I forget exactly when that song came out, right? And then he dropped the video. It was banned, right? And people say, well, it was banned because it was too aggressive or whatever. But when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, this video was banned because it was taking on the prison industrial complex. It was taking on the dehumanization and this is right around the time when, it was during the crack era, it was the war on drugs, whether I think it came, right, before, the 95 crime bill, but the 95 crime bill, there was a big political, build up to the 95 crime bill, right? You know what I'm saying? Which opened the door for, the massive incarceration of Black people and brown people, over the past, 25 years or so. So, I mean, this, now looking at that, kind of backtracking and being like, oh, and then, and then it forces you to actually appreciate Michael Jackson in a whole new light, right? It's like, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? This is a real thing that he was doing, right? And he was using his platform intentionally, you know what I'm saying, in a very specific way, which I just want to segue because we want to talk about, and we want to segue into like contemporary videos
exactly.
and Beyonce and Lemonade and someone who also is on that stellar platform, that stellar level, who's also using their platform in a very specific way. So I just wanted to make that bridge because there's a lot of space in between those two things and a lot of subtext under that to talk about. So yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of, if we were to segue over, arc over the 20-year period to what Beyonce did with Lemonade, and there were 7 directors that worked on that film, including Khalil Joseph and Melina Matsoukas. That, I think, being able to meld that many imaginary visual vocabularies together definitely came from all these years leading up to what she was able to do, but also in a couple of earlier conversations that we've had, right? Thinking about platform and thinking about agency, not just her celebrity status and that she has an access to equipment and crew and budget, but also that she's working alongside independent artists who are able to use the same platforms to make their own work with the tools that we have now, the democratized tools that we have now to make films. I'm interested in what it means if we compare her to the Jacksons or her to Janet Jackson in particular. I must just throw that out there. When then there wasn't a democratization of tools. What does it mean for somebody of that status to be making this kind of video work now? Is it a game-changing work, considering what the kids are doing with phones right now and don't have the budget that she does? It's sort of an interesting slippage that she is standing in, because she's access to all of that and the same budget that the Jacksons had.
Right. So I would say that by the time Beyonce comes out with Lemonade, like everything that's revolutionary about Lemonade is, and which is not to take away from Beyonce, because I want to give her spot, because I think there's some. I made the case to a good friend of mine, Rahul. I rest in peace, love Rahul, right? But I said Beyonce's a genius when Lemonade came out. I was not a Beyonce fan until Lemonade came out. I never listened to Beyonce, but Lemonade changed my mind for some very specific reasons. Rahul argued me down in the way that Rahul does, but I made that contention. But I want to say that before I say that by the time that Beyonce got to doing what she did with Lemonade, the visual and aesthetic revolution had already happened with independent Black filmmakers, right? They had already, and I'm speaking from the standpoint, and Jazmyn, you can speak to this too. I'm speaking from the standpoint of someone who studied image making, in the analog production days, working with film and chemistry, right? And then living and working through the transition into digital technology and digital platform and digital distribution, and the way that just opened up all the possibilities, right? And so that access piece, I think, is super important, right? And I think that, and just to kind of to throw a little Easter egg out to our audience, the title of our session, we came up with it to try to describe, Black spatial elegance, to describe, what is the essence of that revolution, right? What is the essence of that revolution that, embodies, digital production, digital distribution, right? And then how have Black artists, been freed, right, to exist for Black people to exist in this creative space, that was unprecedented before, because there's so much technical and economic gatekeeping with the production of films, right? And so I think the thing that Beyonce is doing is building on top of, and you see it, if you see it in Lemonade, and the fact that she used so many different directors, but you see her actually tapping into Black vernacular, visuals, right? Like straight off the street visuals, like straight out the barbecue visuals, straight out the backyard visuals, right? You see and you say, oh, okay, right? And the popularization of that aesthetic, I think comes from, independent Black creators, really, pushing their vision, out without having millions of dollars to do it, but finding ways to make something that they can walk out their door and make it as, aesthetically, hypnotizing as possible, right? And I think that that's what she's picking up on, right? So
yeah, I love how you just really you're helping me segue in, because I'm always bring up hip hop, because I think when it comes to like true essence of Black culture, hip hop is like the person that you send over the hill to go see if it's safe, and if it's and people take hits for it. And so I would say, girl, you gonna have to come up in here. I'm sorry, y'all. I got youngins up in here.
oh
Girl, I'm on a call.
see, there it is. This is Black vernacular panels.
This is it right here.
Y'all got.
I was gonna say that mixtape culture. I gotta shout out 50 Cent, and I gotta shout out the mid 90s to probably like the mid 2000s. I feel like that I feel like that's the connection, because as you're saying, Inye, we're talking about a time where the access to film production is starting to shift, and you got people in the hood really telling hood stories, like telling stories from the corner. And to an extent, there's that W.E.B. Du Bois-ness, that talented 10thness that was saying, oh, like you gotta portray Black culture as this, and so in addition to the elegance, there became the trueness, the grit, the other side of the game. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like what Inye was just describing, in the it became commercialized. It became acceptable to show Black barbecues en masse. You know what I'm saying? In a way that I feel like it some people had to do some wild stuff. 50 Cent had to shoot some bad movies in New York, had to do some low grade stuff to get to a point where now we have something like Power, which isn't a music video, but it's like the essence of Black culture intertwined with music and film. And so I just wanted to, elevate the hood culture that I think set the stage for Beyonce to do Lemonade. And then I also got to shout out Kanye, because from jump, Kanye's music videos and visuals were intentionally challenging the mainstream, and still to an extent. It's like Jesus Walks, people was like, oh, it's nigga saying Jesus and burning crosses. Oh, I don't even get it, or whatever, and he had Runaway, which I believe came out before Lemonade. Maybe even Runaway came out in 2010, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And I feel like that was kind of like a Renaissance era, which I'm starting to see more and more artists, are following that line. So I'm loving seeing all the connections, because it just shows how vast and wide our musical expression is. It's not limited to pop. It's not limited to R&B. It's not limited to hip hop, but it goes across. And there's the elegance, there's the grittiness. We got all that.
Rell, you're giving me a delicious segue right now into bringing the diaspora into this, right? Because when we're talking about the resources or the lack of resources, and you use what you got to tell the story that you need to tell, and how the writing changed in hip hop, and how that changed what people would talk about in their music, and how they would write in their music. And the music, the lyric is the script for the film, right? And that people are starting to show, instead of showing the high life that we're trying to aim to get out of the hood, you're showing the actual space you're working from. And that was reflecting the lyric that was coming out of hip hop. But that's also something that links to when you're talking about African and Caribbean aesthetics, and you're talking about resources and access to platform and access to equipment to make your work, when you're working with even less, because you're not working from the hegemonic, imperial state that America is, right? And you're working in these other spaces, showing that aesthetic. And it's happening now. That arc isn't over yet. We haven't arrived yet. That is still affecting the kind of visuals that you're seeing, or that are accepted, or are desired and appropriated in many cases now, that's coming out of the hood in Jamaica, and the hood in Trinidad, and the hood in Ghana and Nigeria. Like, we can talk about what Nigeria has done in terms of aesthetics to open up I can just film something in my grandma's bedroom right now and pop it in here.
Can I say something about that too? Because, and it relates to something that Jarrell said earlier, because you were making a comparison of like elegance versus gritty. First of all, to me, all of it's elegant. Anything Black is elegant to me. Everything that we do is elegant, beautiful, excellent, brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, just the essence of who we are is all of those things, number one. And to what you're saying, Berette, is I'm loving how much more acceptable, I guess, it's become to really put our realness on display in those ways. Because you're right, like, when we think, and especially I do think in terms of hip hop a lot too, when we look at earlier hip hop, it was really all about, the bling, as people say. So it was about lifestyles that people really didn't live, really didn't come from, really didn't know anything about, or were aspiring to be, but it wasn't reality. Right. It was this false sense of, whatever that they were placing upon, a group and a generation of people to want to be, to have, yachts and chains and all that shit. And that's not real. And now we're coming back to being able to, have our visuals represent where we're really from. And speaking of the diaspora, like, I was going over our playlist earlier, and I really love Blitz the Ambassador's videos. That he first of all, he's dope, but just period. And he's been to Seattle, so y'all need to get hip on that. But just all the locations that he chose, and the way that, those videos were shot. And then also, like Rell, where you chose, the things that strike me about a lot of your videos that I've seen, of course, there's this hometown pride, hometown connection. You make a lot of locations very relevant in the in a lot of your music videos. To some of us, you're not like blasting out. You say South End a lot, but other than that, you're not blasting out your location necessarily. But for those of us that know, when you're sitting in from the Jumbo Boss, you're on Rainer and Genesee. But then I also love the way you take hood locations. So you're at Metro bus stops, you're at, Rainer and Genesee, you're at all these different corner stores, you've done that. But then you also really make sure that you put on this display the beauty of this city. And you have so many beautiful, natural, environmental elements in your videos. And I can tell that's purposeful, getting drone footage, having wide shots. So it's not just about you, the artist. It's really
about the place.
I feel like you as an artist is not just Rell Be Free. It's like Rell, Seattle, South End, this environment, this place, these spaces, like all of that is what is encapsulated in who you are as an artist. And that's what I see in your visuals. So if we can segue, because I'm not trying to take your job there, but I would just
it's all our job here.
Well, Rell as like the artist, the music artist on the panel, I just want to know more about like how you work with your, because you some of the directors that you work with, you've worked with multiple times, like
Justin and Jeffers.
Yeah, so what are you guys doing? Like, and is that the stuff, some of the stuff that I mentioned, like, is that very intentional? Because that's what I feel, you know, as a local, as a Seattleite, like I feel that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I love that. And it feels really great to be seen. Like, you know, I'm low-key sweating. It's a little hot where I'm at, but I was just like, you know, like my heart. Yeah, it's dope to be seen and to hear from other folks that are from Seattle, seeing and feeling that. Because like growing up in the town, I almost have never felt represented by the artists that represent Seattle, except the ones that are still connected. Shout out to Big Bro Gabriel Teodros, you know what I'm saying? Kings, Ab Creole, you know what I'm saying? Canary Sing, Mad Lion. There's a bunch of legends I can mention that, you know what I'm saying, in their music and in their visuals, you know, they were able to tell stories that I was like, okay, yeah, I know what they're talking about, you know? And so for me, I'm like literally still, I still live on Graham. so like everything is still very Seattle to me. And I always want to try to tell stories that I know will last long. And in 10 years, South Seattle, like in the last, there's videos that I shot. My South by 16 video, which came out in 2018, the corner store that I was at is about to get renovated, it's about to get torn down on a corner of Rainier and Cloverdale, you know? And so like, I want it to be visual history. When people go back and look at the videos, they're going to be like, this is what, you know what I'm saying? This is what Seattle looked like. And it's not going to be told from the perspective of, you know, somebody writing some corny article talking about, you know, whatever, or somebody else telling our story. I'm like, nah, nigga, I'm gonna tell the story. And we're going to tell it in a fly way. So yeah, shout out to bro Justin. I was literally with him earlier today, which is wild. We was talking about the next video. And he's another dope artist. He also does music as well. And yeah, it comes from conversations. I'm the kind of person similar to Michael Jackson. Like, if I ask you to do a music video, I probably already have 100 ideas and know the locations. I don't nobody dress me. There was one time I got dressed. Shout out to Hanan from Fifth House, because she dressed me for Call This Track Amazon. They got me fitted.
You look like a king. You're a king in that video. Mike, please watch. It's in the playlist. It is in the playlist. Call Me Like Amazon. It is a beautiful video.
Shout out to Kamyar and shout out to Hanan and Tony Banks from Fifth House. Those are two brilliant artists as well. And yeah, the collaborative effort, I think that's something I really want to emphasize too is, you know, I'm a Cancer. I'm an initiator. I'm always gonna come with energy. Like I'm rarely indecisive when it comes to my creativity. Like I just feel like I have to be like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want it to look like. And to be surrounded to have homies that are able to hear my ideas, I know I have to be able to clearly communicate them. And I think that's something that I've, as an artist, it's improved my ability to collaborate visually when I'm able to communicate, you know, how the music can connect to a visual. And I think also like my music is very visual. Like you can listen to a song and it's like, oh, this, like, I feel like I can feel like I'm seeing something. And so me and Justin, you know, we did facts together. And we had some, you know, some other homies that definitely, you know, helped just kind of make it happen. And then when it cut me off, I really had I had a vision of certain shots. I like saw them in dreams and I was like, yo, we got to make this happen. And so like the drone shot where I'm in the back of the blue car with an orange jumpsuit on.
Yes, I was gonna shout. I was gonna shout that out. I was gonna shout that specifically as a photographer. When I first saw, I was like, oh fuck, that shot is fucking perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect, and not just the shot, the segue into the shot, like to see him disappear into the back of to see you disappear into the back of this pickup truck, right? To see and then to have that transition shot to the overhead, it was beautiful. It was perfect. Like it's perfect. Yeah.
Y'all got going to somebody else. I'm saying goodbye. I'm loving this love.
But you know, it's interesting. I think there are some things that you said earlier, Berette, that I wanted to double back on. You talked about creating out of the seat of empire, right? And the diasporic voice, you know, and there's a couple things I want to sort of jump on and then see if anybody picks it up. But one, Blitz, who's Ghanaian, right?
Yes.
So Blitz, who's Ghanaian, who immigrated to the United States and then really launched his career here in the United States, but then anchors his creative voice, in Ghana, but also in the diaspora, right? And so I think that's an interesting one. I think that's an interesting thing. Looking at the way that he does that makes me think of, and might be a stretch for some folks, but it makes me think of Marcus Garvey, right? Who immigrated from Jamaica, to build, the UNIA here in the United States, specifically in Harlem, who was influenced heavily by Booker T. Washington and at the Tuskegee Institute, right? So there's something specifically about America and its ability to project its power out across the world, economically, militarily, culturally, socially, politically, that I think has really empowered Black artists working in the United States to kind of have a kind of cultural hegemony, as sort of the standard bearer for popular Black culture around the world. And I experienced that the first time when I was in high school. I traveled to Papua New Guinea, right? And the folks in Papua New Guinea was like, yo, you know what I'm saying? You're Black America, yo, what's up? You know what I'm saying? Like it was a real, like it literally was like a real thing, and it was the first time I was just like, I was literally a celebrity just because I came from America. I was Black, not because I came from America, because I was on a trip with a bunch of other folks from Garfield High School. I was one of 2 Black people on that trip, and they were like, you know what I'm saying? We're trying to know you, and that was the first time and my father's Nigerian, right? So, I have an understanding of it, but I think that that's an important thing, right? And I think that the diasporic voice is really important in those narratives and those tones and textures. And something we didn't talk about in our earlier conversations was Steve McQueen's Small Acts and The Lovers Rock.
Please bring it in.
You know what I'm saying?
What it just does.
And yo,
Yes.
lovers,
bringing in other Black codes
oh my
in
God.
the discussion.
I'm just gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you that. Now listen. I grew up because, like I said, I grew up in a very Pan-Africanist household. So reggae and sort of revolutionary Black music in particular was a part of my upbringing. But I was familiar, obviously, very much steeped in reggae music. But obviously there's the relative to roots, which is the Lovers Rock, right? So you got the Gregory Isaacs and and the other folks, right? Which it never really clicked with me as a youth, right? But I feel like the way that Small Acts brought that fire in that episode helped me understand it, and I think that's the power of the filmmaking, right? Being in that party scene, right? And then feeling that energy rise, like just almost to a boiling point, and then point where everybody's like, oh, I was like, that shit fucking blew my fucking mind. I'm gonna be honest with you. That was so, I don't know. I think that, and I feel like being in America, it's high time that we get that feedback from the diaspora, right? Especially through the culture, right? Because I think that I think that there's a conversation for us as Black people globally that we can have, through our culture about who we are and what our relationships are. So, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that in, because one of the things that we talked about a lot is the different kinds of subversive codes and signifiers that show up in music videos from different parts of the world, right? Different Black cultures, and thinking through what we can read and what we can't read, and what gets picked up or what gets circulated or disseminated as more legitimate than others. And that has to do with the power lines of empire, right? To use that line that you put in one of our talks.
Yeah.
One of the things about, just to do a little comment on McQueen's Lovers Rock, that particular segment in the whole Small Act series was so full of codes that were very, I grew up in Jamaica, but I didn't grow up in the Caribbean community in England. My experience in England was through the African community in England, right? It was a different Black community yet again. But when watching that film, I recognized Jamaica. I understood every nuance, every rub up, every, you know what I mean? Every slow jam, all the curry goat and the rice and peas and everything cooking up, the rolling out of the carpet to set up the dance, the whole length and arc of the night, the going out into the garden to have a cigarette and go back in and hold a dance again. All of it was just, it took me to Jamaica, even though it's talking about Caribbeans in England. And that goes to that whole language, right? That vocabulary that we get from not just the lyric in the music and the sounds and the beats that have a whole other kind of language that's communicating to all of us, but the visual language that holds other codes that not everybody's going to be able to read, right? But we can read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, that's interesting. I just want to say this, between what you're saying and what Jazmyn and Rell were talking about around Rell's videos, I think there's something about the specificity of place, right? Yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Black people, we want to represent, like we literally want to represent, but in representing the specificity of where we're from, there's something universal that we're communicating to other folks, right? That I think also comes through.
Because the represent is the talking to.
Yeah.
Right? It's the call.
It's the call. Yes, it's the call. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I was just going to say something just about the through line with filmmaking, period. You know, I love that you brought that Lovers Rock up, because that's like a perfect example of just thinking about how music too is really, like, when you think about filmmaking in that respect, or in music videos, like music kind of plays a foundation for how the visual is presented. That's what I feel like, you know, when in those moments, that those party scenes in that particular episode, it was the music that really translated like the energy. You know, I've not been to London, you know, wherever they were at in the UK to experience, you know, that energy. Like I know what the, you know, the Caribbean vibe is, but you know what I mean? So, but it was translated through the music, the vibe. Then I felt that because of that. And that, I feel like that's the same thing, you know, when music videos are being created, you know, it's, the music is the foundation by which, you know, the inspiration for these obviously these videos really come from. And when you're inserting moments with music in film, I think that that's the same thing, you know, and especially for us, like you said, you know, it's the call, it's that's how we relate to one another. Music is a really big way, and place, and just certain identifiers that everybody's not going to understand, everybody's not going to get, but we understand. All of us from the day, not even have ever been in that type of environment. I knew it was, you know, I felt it. I knew it was because it's a universal thing for our culture.
No, it's interesting because go ahead. Just because I dropped the Steve McQueen, and now I feel like it's because it's so rich and complex and layered, right? But for me, the most powerful part of that film, and the powerful part of that sequence scene, is when the actual music disappears and the chanting starts. Right? And the thing about it is that, you know, that's the part that's universal for Black people, right? Something like that takes me back to the Doghouse, right? Back in the day, you know, I forget who it was, but somebody was one of the MCs from the East Coast came out with the roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let that motherfucker burn. And we used to do it at the basketball games, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But it would be a moment when everything would stop, and everybody would be on that, just boom, 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 hit, and just hitting it. And I feel like that's, no matter whether it's the party scene in Lover Rock, or whether it's a crowd rally, a spontaneous crowd rally at a basketball game in the CD, whatever it is, like Black people universally know what that is. We understand intrinsically.
You know what you're taking me to right now, Inye? There's also within this call, right, and within this talking to each other, because we're talking to each other across distance that we didn't create, but we're still bridging it.
Right.
And you just took me to a scene Jazmyn and I just saw Summer of Soul, Questlove Summer of Soul, or when the revolution could not be televised. Woo! Essential viewing, y'all. Please go and see that film, dropping everywhere tomorrow. There's a scene where Sly and Family Stone are raising up the audience, 50,000 people at this concert, never seen before because they erased this history. Now it's out. He is raising up the 50,000 people, and then the music dropped and stopped. And all he had to do was raise up his hand, and they just kept singing that song. And it was like a spiritual, religious chant going on as they chanted him off that stage. So powerful. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening within these visual aesthetics and these styles, right? And also sort of, I don't want to use the word normalizing, but making it okay to be inside of our Black joy exactly where we are, instead of aspiring to what Empire told us to aspire to.
Yeah. But I feel like
right? Because that's the part that's like making us really see ourselves and celebrate our stories.
I just have to say this too, because you brought up Summer of Soul, and because Jarrell said something too when he was talking about his videos about the doc, because this is when we were at the movies the other night. My brain was just like,
yeah.
But Rell, you said something about, the intention behind some of the locations that you shot at. You brought out the Rainier and Cloverdale store because it's getting ready to get torn. The documentation, the aspect and the importance of documentation. And I think that that's something that's really important for us in music videos and filmmaking and all that. And that connection, with Summer of Soul, and how something was documented, it was lost for 50 years, and it's revitalized now. I think shameless plug, Langston, right now we're doing a screening of this film Nation Time, which again was something that was lost. Over 50 years ago, thousands of Black people, hundreds of thousands of Black people, descended upon Gary, Indiana, to really talk about what was going on in the Black communities. It was documented, and then it never went anywhere. It was deemed too much. And so it just got, kind of thrown away. And so we're seeing this 50 some odd years later. And so the importance of not only documenting our stories, our communities, our landmarks, the places, spaces, things, people, all the things that are important to us, it's really, really important to document and tell our stories and hold on, and not let them get lost, and not let it be 50 plus years. And so what I appreciate about what a lot of folks like Jarrell and other, artists are doing with just music videos, within just, a few minutes of time, you're able to tell a short story, document pieces of history, so that when people are looking and you're vibing to music, you're also feeling that nostalgia. And then you can tell a larger story just based on seeing him doing his song from a certain corner, and tons of artists have done that locally, which I appreciate, Gifted Gab and her MC partner, when they did that in the promenade parking lot before that got torn down, and that, it means a lot to us for whatever reason. This strip mall was so important to us as Black people in the community, but that's important, you know what I mean? And so I appreciate, just what people are doing in the smallest ways. You don't have to make a film or a documentary in order to preserve our history.
Ooh, yes. 5 minutes long. Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I love hearing that. There was something that y'all were saying that had me really thinking about, actually, Jazmyn, you said something about the relational dynamic. And I'm hearing y'all talk about call and response. And I feel like one of the things that's important is our stories show the kind of relationships and dynamics that are being depicted in these stories. What I loved about Small Acts was the relationship dynamics on display, that it didn't have to be these atypical Black stories, like, okay, there's a abusive father and a crazy, blah, 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 and the sons, and that it's not that's not actually that's not a reflection of the masses of Black folk. That's a part of our culture for sure. It's, you know, I just really appreciated the mom and dad conversation, the mother and son relationship, and the episode that really took me was the last one, the education one. I thought it was probably the least musical one, because so going back to the party one, I just loved how music was playing literally the whole episode, and it's one of them things you're watching and it's not until 30 minutes in and you're like, is there the music hasn't stopped. There's been a song playing every time. Either they were singing in the kitchen or the DJ started playing. And even those kind of like connections, the different dynamics of how music comes out of our culture, right? Mama's in the kitchen singing naturally, but it's not no like plantation Negro spiritual. It's just mamas and aunties in the kitchen cooking. And then DJ smoking weed, playing music still playing. And then going to that last episode, which I said was like the probably the least musical, just really I appreciate seeing different dynamics of Blackness being elevated, because there's so many stories, you know, as a Black boy rapper, how many of us done did a music video with a bunch of dudes behind us with a water, like how many more times can we see it? And I'm not even really dissing that, because that be what some people be on, but it's like, for me, I'm just like, okay, how many times do we need to see this? Okay, they do this in Chicago, they do this in LA, they do this in New York. I'm gonna be honest, damn, them niggas don't really do it like that in Seattle. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we make it ours? How do we make it new? And so with all this film stuff, we know we talked about Beyonce, but come on, y'all know it was her little sister that told her to push all that. Solange is the reason why, in my mind, I think Solange is the reason why Beyonce started telling.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, period. But she was doing hood shit way before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that gets back to the whole issue of platform power and platform, right? It gets back to that, because Solange's everything, I think, is way more compelling by miles than Beyonce's. But Beyonce has this massive, machine, right? She's got this massive machine that can, do whatever the Beyonce magic stuff does, right? So I mean, but yeah, Solange, definitely.
But Solange, to bring it to the skill set that goes into making these films, I will give her props though. A lot of people don't know Beyonce is an editor. She edits a lot of her music videos, like actually an editor. Most of her videos, she's the one who edited those things. And editing is not easy.
No, not at all.
That's putting the final story we see. So yeah, I feel you on that. Like, she's definitely got voices around her and influences around her to help her craft narrative, and to know like what quotidian stuff to put in her film, who the hot poets are, who the feminists are, putting Chimamanda Adichie in there and Wasan Shire in there, and all of that. But then when it comes to the technical proficiency and execution of stuff, she's bringing it in the filmmaking side of things and doing the editing as well. But of course, working with all the directors that we've named too, because Blitz Ambassador just worked on Black is King, right?
Right.
So some of the directors we're talking about here are showing up in all of these other spaces. But there's also something I'm wanting to bring up too, in terms of like, symbolism, and how we're documenting our stories, but then also how we're guiding a certain vibration, hope, or spirituality to our people through our videos. And just thinking about, Rell, like how you arc that documentation to following the light, right? In facts, and wanted to talk about that, like visual idea or aesthetic idea or narrative idea, like what you were doing there with your director.
the brilliance of just the little things too. I'm sorry, because you be having me amped up when I watch your stuff sometimes. I love watching local stuff and just like the little tidbits that you throw, and like how you took the fax newspaper clippings to make. I'm like, see, and you didn't say any, like, you know what I'm saying? It's just those little subtleties that's like, if you know, you know. If you don't know, then you just think it's whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for real. It's and that's the thing, is like, it's things like that that I wouldn't expect anybody not from Seattle to probably ever notice, you know. Shout out to the facts only. And so when you say the light, I think you mean from Cut Me Off, that it ends with the beaming light. Yeah. And you know, so sometimes there's certain things that you want to communicate kind of explicitly, but then there's other things that, you know, you don't want to be too on the nose about. And I think that was a dynamic that we didn't want to name super explicitly. And that's where I think some of the brilliance of directorship comes in, where I have this idea, and like I had the idea of like, okay, I remember me and Justin were literally walking in the rain. I was like, all right, then, bro, we're gonna go on this walk. I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna tell you the video, and then we're gonna turn it into a real video. And there are certain ideas that his brilliance was able to make real and come from an idea here to, okay, we're gonna put this on screen. And so the initial idea was that, you know, there's always this exchange of energy. There's some sort of exchange, you know. I broke out of somewhere, maybe, you know what I'm saying? I found this bag. Inside this bag is something that I'm gonna give to somebody. They're gonna give me something in return. I'm gonna take this somewhere else. I'm gonna give that to somebody. They're gonna give me something in return. And that's really just an example of, that's the energy exchange, you know, the pureness. And it ended with literal crystals, you know what I'm saying? I'm giving out, you know what I'm saying, some clear quartz to the homies at the studio, because that's really, you know, that was the theme. Is just like, you know, the energy you pass, and sometimes it's how it's received is different, because, you know, me having this beautiful scene, which, like I said, it came into my head to and have these Black women dressed in white, strapped up. These are real guns. These are not fake. This is all, and we really do this. You know what I'm saying? Peace to the crew, the Black Elephant Party, but, you know, taking folks to the range and learning how to handle guns safely, not because we're like, oh, everybody need to get strapped up, but hey, look at us, it's affecting our community. We don't learn about this, then we're gonna need to figure it out, you know? And so that imagery was, some people don't like it. They're like, Rell, why you gotta do that, you know? And I'm like, one, it looked beautiful. Two, you know, it kind of gets to that example of like, the energy you pass on, you can't always quantify its impact. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Sky Dior, who also made a little feature in there, who's a great, I gotta shout out Sky Dior, because she's amazing. She's a little 8-9-year-old young lady rapping her little tail off. And she just pulled up, and her sister, they were just super, just really, really good to work with. And so, like I'm saying, the brilliance of the collaboration to have ideas and music then brought visually is something that I have to like always acknowledge in a similar way. You know, like I don't produce the beats that I rap on, that I make music on. That's a collaborative effort, you know, with my guy Noah Coinflip. And then even from making the song to getting it to the final version, the mixing, the mastering, each of those pieces is similar, like you're saying, you know, it's editing, you know, maybe you weren't behind the camera, but the editor has an immense creative contribution to the final product, you know? And so shout out to, like I said, Hanan, Tony Banks, Kamyar from Call This Track Amazon, because I thought the editing of that was amazing. Yeah. Now there was something I did want to get at earlier, because it's dope that, you know, we're talking about me and Michael Jackson and damn Beyonce in the same conversation. I'm gonna tell you what though, we got different budgets. And so I want to bring it back to what Inye was saying about independent artistry, and that, you know, I posted it in the chat, but mainstream culture always pulls from the margins, right? And so it's actually probably all these videos visuals of artists and people in hoods we ain't never gonna see. They'll never have, you know what I'm saying, $5 million budget to be able to tell the story, you know? And I'm like, look, I can make $1,000, $4,000, $5,000 go this far. Somebody run me a check. Somebody give me 100 bands, please. If I can do this with $4,000, you know what I'm saying? And so there are different, and that's me saying that to credit all the folks that are telling these stories without the big platforms. You know,
it's great that you're giving those numbers too. It's great that you're giving those numbers too, because when you watch Cut Me Off, it looks like it's a way bigger budget than that, with all of those wide, beautiful shots of the Washington landscape, you know, the costuming, the coming into the urban space, like the whole travel through space. That is Black spatial elegance, that video for me, where you arc through until you come to be kicking it in that space with the light, with the Black Elephant Party. Like all of that energy exchange through the visuals does not look like a small budget. So to that point, this is what happens when you're making work from the margins and you don't have, this is the inventiveness that creates Black spatial elegance. Because Black people are always making out of nothing and then influencing what gets made on the bigger platforms or the platforms that have the budget.
TikTok.
Tell me, am I lying?
TikTok. And that's the earlier conversation that we had earlier this week, where it's like, you know, that's the brilliance of just how far things have come. Because, you know, a video like Cut Me Off 10 years ago probably would have cost you a lot more than it cost you to do when you did it, you know? And so it's just the, you know, we talked earlier about just how we are always able to innovate. We work with what we have. And we're able to make it look top tier. We don't, you know, because we are at this point, right, where we're not allowing people to cut us out of spaces because we don't have the adequate equipment and the adequate technology and the this and that they say we need in order to do these things and it be of this quality in order for it to be on somebody's 4K TV. No, like you can do that shit from your iPhone. And it's going to be, and you can still have it at 1040, you know, quality, you know, and it still look good as long as, you know, for some, I'm not tech savvy, so I can't, Jazmyn can't, but y'all can. You know, there are people that can do these things with limited resources. And you take these innovations, these apps that are being created, you know, and you take something like TikTok and you see how, you know, whoever created TikTok, you know, in China or whatever, you know, created it and intended it for whatever they intended it for. Look what Black folks have done.
Look at what they've done. They are telling full-scale narrative film in
100% content creators. We're using this platform to literally get messages across, to create content, to influence the masses. It's us driving apps like TikTok and whatever these other apps are that the millennials and the Gen Zs are using nowadays. But it really is like, you know, I get on TikTok sometimes, it's very entertaining, but it's literally, you know, the dance trends and the music things and everything, like it's young Black people behind all of that. And then it's everybody else trying to emulate it.
So
I
just want to do a quick roll call on Black innovation, right? Because I listen, I'm like, oh, there's a pattern. I mean, there's a pattern. We all know the pattern, but I just want to do the roll call because we got to represent, you know, and so I just want to say, starting, you know, for instance, Europeans created the saxophone, right? And John Coltrane blew it out the box, right? You know, the sampler was created in Japan, you know what I'm saying? And brothers in the South Bronx took it to a next level, right? YouTube, you know, was created by whoever YouTube was created by, right? Right, you know, or TikTok and Black people totally flipped the script on it, right? Digital, you know, digital filming technology, you know, all of these things, you know, there's a pattern of us, you know, taking, you know, tools, right, with very little resource and totally changing the nature of how these tools were conceived to be used, right? And I just want to say that when we're talking about TikTok and what's happening with TikTok, I don't see that as being very different than what Black folks are doing, with a drum, a bass, and a saxophone with jazz 110 years ago, right? It's literally the same thing, right?
Or even in the 80s and 90s with a
right.
little camcorder.
With the little camcorders, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think there's something that we, and God bless, having a budget, right? But I know that what I know is that not having, and this is just me, what I know is not having a budget forces you to do things that you would not do otherwise.
Yes.
Right. It actually forces you. Now, at some point, y'all need to get your 401ks on and make sure that you can retire comfortably. So I'm not promoting being budgetless your entire life, but also, I want to recognize, that, that a lot of times our power and our innovation does come from the margins, right? And we have to recognize the people who are the geniuses, the silent, nameless geniuses, the ones who never get logged in the history books, who made some of these things actually happen for us, right? And if we was to do a libation and we don't know their names, but we just gonna call them out, right? Because they're out there, they're in the ether somewhere, right? And they're
I mean, this is one of the things that I always, like I say to my students, or when we're talking inside of Black Cinema Collective, that, that I will always want to push up the names of people before the names of institutions, because the institutions don't have content unless they're going to the street. It's coming from the street. It's always coming from the street. All the innovation is coming from there. But I'm also like, I'm looking at the time, because we could go on forever.
Right, we could go on forever, right? Yeah.
And I don't want us to dip out without like thinking through, liberation and futurism aesthetics in music videos. And I mean, we can pull from the playlist because we've got a few. We got Missy in there. We got FK Twigs. We got, Janelle Monáe. We got Sonny Colon, who I am like a huge fan of the work that he is directing. He directs all his films, edits all his films. I'm wondering about who else we can even bring into that, or what you have to say about those folks and what they did to influence aesthetics, or the directors that they were working with.
Well, I just want to cite Freetown really quick.
Freetown Collective from Trinidad.
From Trinidad, right. I want to cite them just because there was something about the politics of caste and class that they were doing, and I'm going to look in.
Is it Human Form?
Yeah, Human Form, in the Human Form, and I brought.
And that was directed, if I can just put this out there, that was directed by Maya Cozier.
Right. So, so I mean, there's something happening very specific in it that I don't think would naturally occur in a Black American sort of narrative treatment of class and economic tension, right? For me, when I brought this up when we first talked about it, is that when I watched that, it made me think of Parasite, the movie Parasite, right? You know what I'm saying? But there's this whole thing about, basically smash down Babylon. Like we're not trying to, so I see someone typed in our internal chat, they typed Hype Williams, right? But if you look at Hype Williams, if I were to say the on-camera version of Hype Williams will be Puff Daddy, right? And you look at the ways that the Black, in a lot of ways, the Black American way of taking, these class and caste dynamics head on is to imagine appropriating those spaces, right? What does it look like when we appropriate and embody those spaces, right? And that's what the whole bling thing is about, which is sort of self-perpetuating in our visual culture. But when I look at Freetown, I mean, they went in and they just tore the place up, right? They were like, okay, we're going to
go. They went in to destroy it.
They went to destroy it. They went to tear it down, right?
For themselves, but to destroy it.
But to destroy it, and I think that there's something very interesting, I was like, oh, this is, I just wanted to cite that as something that I think, I wonder if I've never seen like a Black American, maybe with the exception kind of sort of PE, and maybe BDP, a couple of folks, but not very many people are really coming at it in that particular way.
And to set the feeling of that video and the scene that starts off in the beginning, where you have the uptown upper class white family, and it's going along with the lyric, right? That, while everyone's hungry and starving and suffering, all they care about is feeding and fattening up themselves at their dinner tables. And they show the full spread of, you know, the very lavish meal that they're seeing in their wine and champagne, what have you, and goblets. And it's the issue of the warning, that scene of the two men who are coming in from the city and stand at the balcony and look at them and go, you have been warned that this is not going to remain your space. That particular aesthetic held like a kind of messaging that I think goes to the point you're making, Inye, that even the mashing up and the sort of seeming anarchy of them kids going into the space later that day to destroy is one thing, but having that standing in white space to warn that revolution is coming.
It's coming, right.
Was a particular language that, you don't see often in white nations where Black people are making protest music. It was a slightly different language there in terms of how protest shows up in music videos in the diaspora, right? And what do you think for you in America, what does that mean? Why do you think that is? I can speak to why I think that is in the Caribbean, but I'm wondering, like, you know, if anybody has a video they think that counters that point, or if they don't, why?
I think that's a really interesting point. And, you know, I think I'm going to try to tie in a response to that with what was already on my mind. And I know that we're talking about visual and music, but I think when it comes to Afrofuturism, regardless of the genre, I got to shout out Octavia Butler because of the stories and the depth of you know what I'm saying, that because like some of them things is not easy to read, you know what I'm saying, like she take you there, like you there, like you there, you know. And I think that when it comes to protest music, when it comes to revolutionary sounds, for real in this era, let's keep it 100, bro. I'ma say niggas is rattled to really be for real off the fence. You know, I'm just gonna keep it 100 as an artist that sometimes doesn't get put in certain places because of my unapologeticness in my lyricism. You know what I'm saying? I think that like that is actually something that we could see more bravery, more, just taking it to the next level. You know, not really doing it for the feelings, or you know, I wouldn't say watered down because I don't like using those terminologies because it's still art. It's still art. But I would say pulling from Octavia Butler's book when it comes to Afrofuturism and just imagining different kind of scenes. I feel like that's what it is, because there's the typical kind of like low-hanging fruit, like, oh, like what would this look like with, you know, 5-10 years, or you just go super, you know, like space cadet, like everything's chrome and we're wearing jumpsuits and cars fly. Instead, be like, what's a post-apocalyptic world look like rebuilding? What is Black community rebuilding? You know what I'm saying? The CD after a devastating earthquake from Mount St. Helens. You know what I'm saying? I feel like those kind of things start to get at the very visceral experience of our culture now. They're always going to be political, and just because being Black is political, period. So if you're telling real stories, you know, especially on the futurism tip, I just really wanted to bring up Octavia Butler, and also wanted to shout out Khalil. Is that Khalil Joseph?
Joseph, yes.
Yes.
Because I was put onto them actually by Justin, the director of Facts and Cut Me Off, because we were talking about the Flying Lotus video, which I love so much.
Thank you for bringing that video in.
Thank you. Yeah. And I feel like that. And so I work with Northwest Tap. Shout out Jazmyn. I know she worked with Northwest Tap as well. I've done they've done choreography to some of my songs before, and I've always wanted to do something that incorporates, you know, historical Black movement with, you know, historical Black music. And I love what those young people over there are doing. But I want to lift up Khalil Joseph because he's bringing that experience of, I mean, doesn't he do stuff mostly for like the museum? And it's a lot of like natural.
He shoots a lot more music videos than people realize.
Stuff. So then to bring it into that genre, you got Kendrick rapping, Flying Lotus getting down. I thought that was Afrofuturism, you know.
Yeah. But you know, just bringing up Khalil Joseph, you know, the one, he's from Seattle. That's the first thing people need to know. That him and his brother Noah Davis from Seattle. His brother Noah Davis is a painter. But also, you know, just linking it in on the contemporary tip, Khalil Joseph was also working a lot with Shabazz Palaces, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if you look, for instance, if you look on our playlist and you look at, and this is not a Khalil Joseph video, but I think the aesthetic of it is very similar to what, you know, what he does. But if you look at Michael Kiwanaku, because
that's by Miro. What is
yeah, that's
Hiro Murai, who films a lot of videos.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, but you know, so when I watch that video, I always think of Shabazz Palace's Belhaven Meridian, which is a Khalil Joseph directed video. So if you find that, you know, you can look at, you know, what is it, Black Man in a White World, and then go find Shabazz Palace's Belhaven Meridian, look those videos back to back, you know, and just kind of see, you know, what I'm talking about. But, you know, I mean, Khalil pulls from, you know, a very organic, you know, everyday Black aesthetic, right? In fact, you know, it's interesting because Khalil Joseph, in his background in actual film, right, references filmmakers like Charles Burnett, Killer of Sheep, right? In Belhaven Meridian, like there's actually, like, he's recreating scenes from these Black filmmakers from like the 80s, you know, who were working in black and white film back in the day. And so there's a lot of subtext and a lot of richness going on. That is, like you said, very political, just the way that Black people are existing in the space and moving as if we're not being watched, as if we're not, how we move when we're not feeling like we're being watched is, I think, you know, is the beauty. That's the Black spatial elegance. That's the thing. It's like, when I watch these, I'm saying, this is what we look like when we know ain't nobody looking.
See, when you say that,
right.
When you say that, I have to bring in Sonny Cologne here now.
Yeah. Okay,
because,
go ahead.
But even, let me just hold that on the hopper for a second, because going back to Rell's comment of, like, what does it look like if we're imagining how we build from the ruin? Because you were kind of like going with that from Octavia Butler. I have to bring in the other video, Space for a Heart, with Freetown Collective. And that was directed by Nadia Huggins, who's a photographer from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Listen, that, I think that video is giving that kind of aesthetic of filming and showing the real street and the person who is operating so far out of the margins, who's living so far out of the margins that they are invisible to the rest of us, but they are living and moving in that space in a futurist mindset of building a boat in the urban, downtrodden urban space and taking that to the water to go travel to the other side, right? It is a beautiful, mystical, futurist video.
We're done with this evening.
What's that? What'd you say?
That was just some gospel.
It is mystical. Yeah. It is mystical to watch it. It's such a beautiful film, you know, and who it is focusing on is very important. And what is in the scene, in the space, in the spatial is important to going back to what we were talking about earlier about what we're embracing about the worlds that we're in, our worlds that we're occupying. And we're not trying to dress it up to satisfy no colonial gaze or colonial aspiration. And then bridging over to the other point you're making about what we look like when we're not concerned about what anybody's seeing. Sonny Cologne is giving it to me. I cannot stop listening to this person. Psychedelic, that video is Black spatial elegance candy. There are a couple of scenes all the scenes are giving you an aesthetic, and he directed it and edited as well, giving you scenes and color and palette and vibe and ease of a group of Black men hanging out in a way that I know I've never seen in any aesthetic, really, because most platforms will keep pushing this idea that Black men are always at odds with each other, are always fighting each other, or it's that if they're together, then it must be that they're gay. And that's painted in some negative connotation of queerness. All of that being wrong, all of that having nothing to do with the truth. We kick it like family. We are community, whether if we queer, we straight, we whatever. And that is a reality of our lives that we don't see put out there. And he puts it out there unapologetically, but not as if to say, I'm putting this out there as an alternative. It just is. And it's gorgeous. And the way it's edited with the drops and breaks of the music and the ease and the slow pan out, with everybody just chilling, shirts off, masks on, playing football and what. It is such a gorgeous film. I highly recommend. Just go to the playlist, people.
Yeah. So can I just
talking about all the artists here?
Well, because as we're talking, I have my third screen up, and when people bring up stuff, I go click on the video so I can watch it and see what's going on, right? Because I was just watching, I was listening, and I realized, the way that I can tell that that a director or somebody is really in love with the way that Black people move is when they film a Black person from behind walking, and particularly in slow motion. I see that so many times, and every time I see that, there's some kind of subconscious cue that tells me that I'm supposed to fall in love with this person, like literally, and you just see the person just kind of moving. You see their shoulders sway, and you see them, they might be going up the stairs or something. You know what I'm saying? But it's in that. But the reason I brought that up because I brought up the video, the psychedelic video, and that was one of the shots. And I was like, I've seen that in so many different places with so many different artists, and I feel like that's whether it's an intentional visual lexicon, I think that it's something emergent, right?
Yes.
I think it's something emergent in the way that we're communicating who and how we see ourselves. Yeah.
Wow. And that just brought us to a natural hold.
Yeah.
We just settled into the realness of that and the truth of that. Y'all, thank you so much. This is not the end, because we talked about we're just gonna start popping up lives. I feel like I don't want to leave us without dropping a quote from one of Rell's songs, because I put this on my Twitter about a week ago because I saw it and I was just like, tell the truth. And it's from Pay the Fee, right? I need that South End property, probably Sound Transit holding it for profits. See a lot of poverty contrast with the wealth, and they do hate you. They just got to do it with some stealth. I love that you put it out there and tell the truth.
Bars, okay? Don't
yeah, for real.
For any because this is not I don't care if he was on this panel and wasn't watching and didn't have anything to do with this. Rell has bars, okay? I'm blocking you out of my screen right now so I don't have to look at your face. This boy, okay, this young man, because I've been listening to him for years now. This boy got bars, okay? And if, I know we're talking about videos and everything, but beyond the visuals, people who are watching, if you don't go to rellbefree.art or whatever your website is, or look him up on Spotify, whatever platform, plug yourself when I'm done talking.
Mateo's dropping it in the chats, dropping it in the comments.
The bars are real, because he's not just an MC, he is a poet, okay?
Right.
He's a true artist. And I don't want to get on, but I just have to, I love giving people flowers. And, when you brought up his lyrics, this is real shit, because, he's so intertwined in so many different things. This is a child of he's not a child anymore, but I'm saying he's a child of the community. So everything that he does speaks, his energy comes out of that. And this is why I can say personally, that's why I rock with Rell Be Free, because it's authentic. He did a program with us last year, one of the most powerful pieces I ever heard, spoken word piece that he did when we did that collaboration with Kennedy Center. It's on the Langston YouTube, by the way. Y'all can find it because it's worth checking out. But he's not just a rapper to be a rapper. I said earlier, yeah, he says Southern a lot. He has a lot of South End pride, but he's not one of those cats. He's not one of those cats to be like South End, bang, bang. Like, no, he's really like, he has pride in where he comes from. He tells real stories and he talks about real things. And he's also in his real life affecting real change. Y'all saw on the screen how many people came up and was hugging him as they're leaving. This is his real life. Right. And so I know we're talking about a plethora of other things, but while we have this artist on our screen, let's just be clear. He's not just a rapper. He's not just a guy out here making music videos. This is his life. He is sitting in an establishment right now, separated from programming that he is a part of to be on this panel. So he's doing real shit in his everyday life. And we have to acknowledge that and give this man his flowers. Listen to his music, look him up on YouTube, see clips of him doing spoken word and all the other things. Read articles about him because he's out here. Okay?
Doing it.
So dope.
Jazmyn, girl, I'm gonna hire you. Fuck with me. Yeah.
Word up. Yeah.
Give him your links.
Yep.
And I'm throwing love at you for introducing us to Rell and your energy. Thank you very much for bringing your energy. You talked about energy exchange earlier, Rell. That's how the vibe has felt with you every time we've all met up and talked. You're dropping some hard truths for people to face up, and you're always bringing it with elegance. So that's what I read in all of your videos, in the interviews I watch. You bring it with elegance. You're not trying to pop. You're trying to educate and expand. I got that vibe.
It's love. And I got to respond. Thank you, Jazmyn, who's been putting on for me for so long, brings my name up, wants me to be a part of things. So I appreciate it out. I can't even say how much I appreciate the support. And that really is what it is though. We got to ride for each other. We put on for each other. And as Jazmyn said, I'm a child of this community, and I could front and act like, yeah, I do all this by myself. I'm the executive producer of my life. I tell you that much. God is the director, but I'm the executive producer. If I don't do what I do, nothing gets done, but it doesn't come without people like Jazmyn that extend opportunities. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to folks that all the people in my team that support everything I do, like my producers, my squad, my loved ones. And, days like this are low key few and far between when, you have conversations about the things that you've done all the time. Sometimes it's just down into doing it. And so I appreciate it. It makes my heart full. And honestly, this is a blessing. I'm taking notes, having conversations, and I'm learning from you all. And I always try to acknowledge not just the elders, but folks that just came before me. Because like I said, I'm in the same way we talked about the legacy of Michael Jackson to Beyonce to whoever's finna be next up, you know what I'm saying? Same with me, you know what I'm saying? I'm riding on the shoulders of my ancestors and my loved ones and my aunties and folks that elevated me. And so I always got to give that credit where it's due, because, I appreciate the shout outs, but I was definitely invested in, and that's why I feel like I got to hand the energy out, because it was put into me. And so Jazmyn, go, baby, you cried. It is all right. But I really appreciate the love, and I'm gonna keep on passing it for real. More and more.
All right. Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much. Rell Be free. Follow everything that's being dropped in the comments. Follow him everywhere. Jazmyn Scott, follow her everywhere. She's doing the work in the community and running things and opening the doors of Langston. Just like Rell just said, calling people's names, not here for the nonsense. Inye, your brilliance just astounds me. I learn every time I sit with you. Thank you so much for bringing your passion and your knowledges to this panel. very much.
Thank you.
Y'all, see you at the next chat because we're doing this again.
Doing it again. Yeah.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining our chat tonight. We have more Black Spatial Elegance coming at you next week. And we're going to have on July 7th, Maxine Walters with Wayne Chen and Steve Urchin Wilson, who's going to be joining us with the Henry, talking serious things. And yeah, be there, over and out. And we'll be doing this again next year.
We got to shout you out too, because you.
We're not
about, yeah, exactly. Air horn, like, like this Black Spatial Elegance program is the brainchild of you, number one. And, thank you for including us and our organizations in your vision of this beautiful way to celebrate Black Music Month and do it in a unique way, with local Black organizations and other organizations that are supportive of this work. Because we've all been so busy and overwhelmed. And, Inye and I last year were like, oh, we got to do something. Let's do something. And just kind of hit the ground running with the program that we did last year with 206, The Break, to acknowledge Black Music Month. But I so appreciate that, you're doing this, and it doesn't matter that we're into July still acknowledging Black Music Month. We're going to celebrate however we need to celebrate on our own terms. We will do this annually. We got your back. Thank you so much for just doing what you do.
We got your back, for real.
Incorporating just the things that we all love in a place for us to chop it up and unpack and unfold and just be brilliant and enjoy it and have space to enjoy each other like this. So, more roses.
Girl, you just everybody.
Yes, all I want to say is Ashe.
And Inye, you my big brother. I have already told you all the things I like about you. I don't need to go on.
Jazmyn, I love you too.
Bring up them drinks, yo.
Hey,
cheers.
Drinks.
Yes.
So you see it here. Night, y'all. Wow.
All right. That was a good one.
Oh my God. That was so great.
That was popping.
Yes, it was.
Now, what's happening?
I love you. I love you guys. That
was hella fun.
I do.
Oh my God.
Well, I feel like we was in somebody's living room. I feel like we was in the living room.
That's how it was supposed to feel. That's how we wanted it to feel.